people saw what Jesus could do, the healings and the teachings, they would say, God, it's Mithras. He's come to help and save us from the, horrors. And I suspect that's why a lot of the Roman populace then sort of shifted from Mithras to Christianity. And my speculation is that the hierarchy of the church made a deal here, because the pontiff's hat is taken from Mithras. A lot of the things that, and you get given this in the highest grade of the Mithraic initiations, which is to become a pope, a papa, or pater. You go work through the 7 initiations, you finally become a pater, which is the priest of the father. And now, okay, so then look, these Proud Boys in America think they're doing these to support Trump and his ideology. I think they're wrong, and I think that they're wrong for the following reasons. I think they're fake Mithrag people, because for a start they all want to bash and bomb Iran. Now, Iran's the cradle of the Mithraic initiations. We should be nice to Iran and say thank you for all this wisdom you've given us. Thanks for Zoroaster. Thanks for Salman Farsi, who helped give us the Quran. Thanks to Muhammad. Thanks for lots of the Bible that came from Iranian sources. Thanks for the whole idea of the Messiah, the Sehershand. Let's talk about this. Let's see if we can have a way whereby we all win. So the collective Messiah, that is the Jewish people or the Lebanese people or the European people or the French people, can all collectively share the charisma of the divine grace. That would be respectful to Iran, in my opinion, and would be respectful to Mithras himself. Scholars like Henry Corbin, great French academic, studied the traces of Mithraism in Sufism, because it came down through the Sufi lineages, and particularly Shia Islam, which with great thinkers like Suhrawardi, they said, look, Islam is the fulfillment and continuation of Zoroastrian ideology and Mithraism. So let everybody win, And if you really want to be really evil, well, okay, Mithras will sort you out. And then will come what's called the Frashakarity, which is the renovation and restoration of the world to a place of beauty and peace, justice and wisdom. That's the promise of Mithras, where it's not trying to destroy the world with judgment, but rather trying to get the world back to a place of beauty. And God as the eternal light will then reign forever. And also this idea that all souls that have ever existed will be resurrected to live in this heaven on earth. This is Mithraism. And what's wrong with it? I like this idea of eternal peace and beatitude. There's a whole section in Aquinas' Summa Theologica where he talks about beatitude, happiness, and whether God intends happiness for us all, and if so, how, and what about evil sinners, and it's very interesting. So yes, I'm all in favour of the Sehershand coming forward and doing the healing work. And the other thing I want to say about Mithras is that the word mitra means covenant, pact, or friendship, or amity. And in in the Buddhist orders, in the Fellowship of the Western Buddhist Order, which I used to be associated with when I had time in England, there's an initiatory grade called a mitra. Now the term is related to Maitreya, who is the Buddha to come in Buddhism. So there's Gautama Buddha, who emphasized human suffering and follow the Eightfold Path. Then there's going to come Maitreya, who is the Buddha of love, and he will teach essentially how to get this Frashakarity going. And I've always loved this idea. It's written about in esoteric theosophical writings. People like Alice Bailey, Madame Blavatsky wrote about Maitreya. And Krishnamurti was trained to become the Maitreya for our age. I think he was. He didn't want the title and all the razzmatazz, And I think that that's the direction we should be going in as a humanity, not the Proud Boys route. I think this is this is rather silly. It's the difference between like a Walt Disney version of truth and the actual truth. But anyway, that's just my view. So there we are. That's Mithras and Zervanism, who is the Lord of infinite time, who transcends all temporality. Okay, now let's do a card of the gods, shall we, to finish off? Where are the gods in all this? Manifestations.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, you take them out and shuffle, and you offer me one, I'll offer you one. Yes. We're trying to get some new sets printed. It's proving awkward. Voila. Okay, thank you. Right. Excellent. Now let's do these two. We'll do the Knight of Water first, who's Ing. Or now let's do one I got, 16, who is Pan Ku. Let's find what page it's on. Yeah. Now he stands for the card that's known in normal tarots as the Tower. And so he represents the collapsing tower, which is falling down. And there's a sort of irony here, because Pan Ku's actually the Lord of Creation in Chinese Taoism. He's the creator, but he's also the destroyer. And in the text, I go into Pan Ku as a deity, but the tower can also fall down. And I do explain the research I did a lot at the time into the Twin Towers of New York and their collapse. This is what's shown on the thing, because I discovered that Bin Laden was in touch with the Chinese intelligence and military, and there may have been Chinese input into the events of 9/11. I speculate about that in my book on the history of 9/11. And then I asked, well, why was this all hushed up? If China helped bring around the towers, why has nobody talked about this? Well, because Tony Blair and George Bush knew, intelligence had discovered it, but they didn't dare mention it because there would have been a Third World War if America realised China had knocked down their twin towers. So they kept quiet. It was a deliberate thing, and blamed Iraq because they could go after Saddam Hussein. Anyway, I suspend judgment, but I think the more philosophical point is that we humans create things like twin towers and our great cities, but God actually knocks them down. Everything is impermanent. This was Buddha's insight. And we're seeing that in the world, aren't we? Everything we thought was solid melts into mid-air, as Shakespeare said. So what does it mean? If you've drawn this card into your spread, it means you have to examine your actions carefully. Are you displaying certain self-destructive or self-defeating traits and tendencies? Have you nearly brought yourself to a pinnacle of success only to see everything come crashing down? And this is something we all do. We all go for something, you know, and then we normally self defeat ourselves. Most problems in the world, I think, are caused by self-harming. And I mean, drug addiction is just one example of that. Negative traits in relationships and the way that we don't show compassion to each other as people. Those are all represented, I think, by the tower that's crashing down. So the question is, how can we ensure that we survive this? You know, the bombing of the town of Gaza, the city of Gaza, and other regions in Gaza. I mean, these towers literally being blown up in front of us, is an example of Panku. And I think that the whole Gaza-Israel war is self-destruction on both sides. There are no winners here. They both lose, yes.
I have a silly idea I would like to tell you. Capitalism is very strong because they make money from the destruction. So it's kind of a transcendental. They make money building and they make money in destruction.
Sure. No, yes, absolutely. I mean, in Iraq, the invasion of Iraq was an example. So, but I think that shows the poverty of money. It's not wealth that is being made. It's capital, which is the abstraction and accumulation of wealth in a false way. That was what Marx was saying. It's an idol we've created. Whereas if we truly wanted wealth, we wouldn't blow up places like Gaza. We would work with them to create them as tourist centres. We would have done what Trump and Netanyahu proposed, created a port, an airport, made it a vibrant community, as I would still like. So I just pray and hope that we can find something to rebuild all these fallen towers, including in Iraq, which is still in a dreadful state, and Afghanistan. I still have dear friends in Afghanistan, and it's a dreadful. There are so many mines that are laid there. People are being blown up, kids and stuff. We should stop all the wars and then put our energy into rebuilding these places. How are we going to do that? Okay, let's call on this god, shall we? Ing, or Frey, who's the knight of water. And he's the chief god of the Vikings and the Anglo-Saxons. And I've always had a soft spot for Ing because he is a rune of love. And Ing is the name of this god in Anglo-Saxon runes. And it's very interesting. I worked this out. I've meditated on Ing a lot, this rune. And it's the origin of the word English. The English people are followers of Ing. And in English, there's a lot of Ing words. It's a verbal form, so we talk about loving, being and knowledge. You know, it's the Ing that makes it a sustainable process. To be, that's fine, but being, it carries on. It's like a Beethoven symphony. And so that Ing is the life force. In the theology behind the runes, Ing was the god of love, the male god of love. And he was honoured throughout Scandinavia. He was also called Frey, which meant the Lord. And there were temples to Frey and to Ing. In the card, he's got a boat. He's just come off the boat because these were seafaring people and they travelled about. And I know sometimes they have a bad press, but the Viking is someone that travelled about looking for love, essentially. They eventually accepted, after a lot of struggle, that Christ was also on their team and that he was accepted as as an ing avatar in Scandinavia, and when the Danish and Swedish and Anglo-Saxons converted to Christianity, they kept stubbornly to their belief in love, in nature. And you find phallic stones throughout Scandinavia sacred to Ing, just as you do in India that are sacred to Shiva. So the Ing stone, which I've seen in the museum in Sweden, which I visited in the far southwest of the country, they loved Ing, and so did, so I think sometimes Yngvi is the name that is pronounced. He was regarded as the progenitor of the Yngling lineage, a dynasty of Swedish kings. So in those days they believed the king was descended from the gods. I've always loved Alfred the Great, who was the greatest Anglo-Saxon king. He knew all this stuff. He was taught about this, the runes. And his name, Alfred, meant he who takes counsel from the elves. The elves is the Scandinavian spirits of the air, of wisdom, like the kami of Japan. They're called elves in Tolkien, but they're actually deities, kami. And Alfred meant I take counsel from them. So he was listening, and his form of Christianity, like mine, was not to disparage all that, but to be, to accept wisdom wherever it's found. So this, I think, Ing is also a god of freedom, because the word freedom is related to Frey as well. Because true mastery or lordship is in affirming one's own freedom, but also honouring other people's freedom. So that's the essence of all political philosophy, is to yes, want my freedom, like Rousseau said, but also to honour yours. You may do different things with it, but we can come together in our common. And the word friendship comes from the same root. To be friends with someone is to honour the Ing or Frey element between us that unites us all. So this is why he's the Knight of Water. It's said that at Ragnarok, the last judgment of these traditions, Frey will be destroyed by Surt, who's the Lord of Fire from the underworld, coming for revenge. But it's not set in stone. My view, I'm still trying to mediate this one. Please, Surt, don't destroy Ragnarok, don't destroy Asgard. Let Asgard interpenetrate this world. Let the world of the gods and us humans make peace. And the world of the dwarfs and the underworld also, so that we don't have to blow each other up, but rather become metaphysical co-voyagers of interdimensionality and rewrite the Summa Theologica together in a more pluralistic and polytheistic way, so that all the aspects of being acknowledged that Aquinas talks about, instead of all giving it to the one to do, we can let other people play a role, and other deities like Ing or Mithras, give them all a job. Let's have heaven peopled by all these traditions. Be much more interesting sort of heaven than where there's just one god always playing the same tune on the same harps. I submit that's my position, and I think that's a good route to get to peace, because peace stands for pact, and it's a connection between two things. You can't have peace without a pact. And also, just to say, for those that are into etymology, I think I might have shared this before, but the most common word uttered in the English language, would you know what that is?
The most common word in
English. Like in French, it's probably alors.
Ah.
More people are saying alors at any time in France than anything else, I think, right?
Yes.
What are they saying in English?
So? No?
Close, but no. No, they're saying fuck.
Yeah, I thought of it, but I do not want it.
It's all right. No.
It's in the US, not in England.
No, even in England. I mean, I taught kids, they say it all the time. In fuck this, I'm not doing that fucking homework. In quarrels with your partner, you say, I'm not bloody doing the washing up. Fuck that. It's a really common word, right? as a swear word. Probably in French it would be merde. Same thing. However, what they don't know, these people that are saying this, is that the word means to tie or connect. The actual etymology of the English word to fuck is to tie or connect between two people or two souls. And it's related to the word pax or peace. Peace and fuck come from the same etymology, and it means to tie or connect people. So it's a really holy word, just as the act is very sacred, because you connect your life force with another person. And that is the essence of peace. Now that's what Ing likes, because he likes doing that. And you can't do that if you don't have two doing it in a friendship pact. That's the profound wisdom, I think, behind this, that's the path to peace. And that's what the rune Ing means. It's these two interwoven shapes that make a one. These people that created the runes were very clever, actually.
Yeah.
They were the Norse and Anglo-Saxon rune masters and the wisdom people of their people. And they live on. I've been taught runes by these people. They're amazing. And that's the path to peace and friendship. So, yes. So there we are. I always thought that in England we should have a bit of Anglo-Saxon taught, because we're lucky to have that ancient language, but it's not taught in English schools. Like, I can't get it. So in my religious studies classes, I'd always teach them the runic alphabet and give them a basic grounding in the old Anglo-Saxon gods. That should be just general, in my opinion. And then we would come at these life problems with more wisdom. Okay, yeah, last points.
May I make a prayer? Because it's a kind of synchronicity. This card went out the night of water. Because a famous French guy died maybe 1 or 2 weeks ago. And he was a researcher on water. He was a scientist. And his name is Marc Henry. He died at the age of 66 and was a promoter of studying water
Right.
With science as an in-between between matter and consciousness. So it's quite a deep, interesting stuff.
Where was he based?
He was based in Strasbourg.
Ah.
He was teaching there maybe for 30 years.
Oh, right.
And he was also involved...
At the university?
Yes. Chemistry, there is a famous chemistry university there.
Okay.
And he was involved in the homeopathy research a little bit, just as for help, and also water memory. And,
well,
the last topics he had interest in was the power of sounds, because he said, in a word, the frequency is very important.
Yeah.
And you have a scale effect, so whatever the frequency dividing by an integer, you can have a sound on the audible spectrum and could have the same effect of this frequency with the listening sounds. So there are French researchers using a kind of, they call protéodie, with it's a mix between melody and protein, and they found out
converting protein shapes into music.
yes, that's the field of research, and it's applied research, because some of agriculture in France they use sounds to heal plants or to help them growing better. It's quite interesting.
What was the name you mentioned?
Marc Horry.
No, I've got that. The proteinology.
Proteody.
Proteody.
Yes, proteodes.
Okay.
If you look for that word in Google, you will find something.
That's very interesting, yes. I'm sure that Frey, as Knight of Water, is up on all this research. And he loves it. And I would just say the last thing to finish is that about water, which has always fascinated me, I love water, is the actual chemistry of water, why it is so wet and so yielding. If I put my finger on the table, I can't push through it. If I put my finger in my water tea, there's no resistance, I can push through it, right? Now, what's the difference is the physics of this is that water is hydrogen and oxygen atoms that are bonded, H2O. So for every oxygen atom, there's 2 hydrogens that are attached to it. And then, but they're very loosely attached. And so it's Bill Bryson, and he's a popular science writer in Britain. He wrote this amazing book, The History of Everything, in which there's a whole chapter on water, and he explains the physics of it. These hydrogen and oxygen bonds in my tea here are changing partners 2 billion every second. So they're like completely shuffling around. And so when I push my finger on, there's no resistance because they're all partying. They're dancing with each other, literally, if you read Bill Bryson. And that's what gives water its unique thing. So it's a very loose bond. It's like, polygamy, polyamory, where you make a bond with somebody and you don't, you can have bonds with other people. It's like polyamory is what water's doing all the time, but in a massive way.
Best solvent on earth.
So water is ahead of the game, and that's why maybe Frey or Ing loves love so much, because he knows the secret of water, which is about staying bonded to someone, but not in a sort of concrete, fixed, forever way that doesn't let you breathe. And anyway, that's what I've written this book about, Wisdom Affairs. The future of relationships will be more like Ing-based and more fluid, as we say. But that's another story. Anyway, I think we've just solved the problems of the world. How we get from Pan-Ku to Frey or Ing. That's good. Thank you, gods, for coming to us.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. May there be peace on earth. Okay, shall we finish? Thank you.